welcome. Welcome to our book study. So happy to have you here. It's been a while. Please mute your mic if your mic is open. When you come in, just mute it if you don't mind. The muting is supposed to be automatic, but it doesn't always work that way. It's so good to see all of you. Familiar faces. Hi. Yeah, we haven't been together for the book study since last year. And also, but we have other things that happen online, as you know, and I recognize quite a number of people that are familiar faces. Welcome to our newest book study, the Discourses of Atmananda, Krishna, Menon. And I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank our co-hosts, all of you. We have at least 10 co-hosts. Jenny Beal is this week, Susan Telford, Amy Habel, James Gillette, Jenny Sheehan, Rosalind Rourke, Joel Drasner, Verena, Sophia, William Price. And there may be, if you're a co-host and I missed you, I apologize. That's what is on my list. Thank you all for that position. That's an important position for this, the energy of this, of what has evolved into this book study that is going on, I think 4 or 5 years now. And it just gets better and better. It's a rich immersion into the thing that most of us, if not all of us, hold dear. And awakening is the thing. I mean, it's not just a little thing either. It's a life-changing experience. And oh my God, this Atmananda Krishna Menon, this is like a university class. And it's for beginners too, because he's such a practical guy when you see what he has to say. And I want to thank Jenny Beal for being such a astute student of the truth. And she's always, you know, she's a mathematician, a statistician, a engineer kind of a mind, in also an engineering. She has a kind of an engineering mind in truth. And she's a great asset to this book study, to our awareness podcast. And she also has recently become one of our hosts for the Pure Presence conferences. So thank you, Jenny Beal. I love you. And I love your husband, Richard. And I appreciate both of you and for being just here and available for all of the things that you've offer and that we call and ask you for help with. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill, for inviting me into so many different things, and it's great, and it's lovely to be with everyone again in this book club.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Lindsay. Lindsay is our technology in the background. She's also my youngest daughter, and I want to thank you for being so helpful all the time to remind me of things and to keep things put up as they should be, for notifying people and all the things that you do. So thank you, Lindsay, as well. And of course, our staff, and Susan Telford is a big help to me in many things, as is Cindy Krupp. And we have other sources of support that are behind and supporting them. And thank you all for that. And before we get started, let's just have a pause of quiet presence, just acknowledging the truth that we all share, and our attention is the truth. So let's just have a quiet moment of pure presence. And so it is. Yes, thank you. So here we are. We're going to be together for at least 40 weeks. It might end up being 43 weeks. It's a long book study, and there are replays. If you need to miss one, that's perfectly fine. And we have a rotation of hosts, so you'll have a different host each week. And this week we're blessed with Jenny Beal, who is the one that provided the handouts that are, I mean, they're critical. They're like, you could have a book study on each one. And I'm going to invite Jenny to go ahead and give a description and just talk about these two books, or what's referred to as poems, in the discourses, in the preface of the foreword of the discourses. And Jenny, just go ahead and take it away and give us an introduction to these, please.
Okay, I'd like to start by giving an introduction to Atmananda Krishna Menon, because he's not that well known a sage. You know, people have heard of Nisargadatta and Ramana Maharshi, but not so much of Krishna Menon. So and that will also help to explain a little bit about those poems. So he was a spiritual teacher from the Advaita Vedanta tradition, and he lived from 1883 to 1959. And he was the originator of the direct path. He actually coined the term the direct path. He came from a very traditional Indian background. He was a Brahmin, but he was not a sannyasin, and that's a renunciate. And that's really quite unusual for a prominent Indian guru. So he just lived a normal life as a householder. He was a married man with children. There's a short biography at the end of volume 3, because this is a collection of 3 books, which describes his education, his work in law enforcement. He was a policeman, also a prosecutor, and also describes how he met his teacher. Some of it you can probably take with a bit of a grain of salt. It's written by Nietzsche, who did the discourses. But it's a lovely description anyway. So his teacher was Swami Yogananda, but you know, there's loads of Yoganandas, and it's not going to be any of the Yoganandas that you can find on the internet. It's not the well-known ones that are on Wikipedia, for example. So Yogananda encouraged him to pursue the path of an acharya. And an acharya is a special kind of teacher who's capable of leading disciples to realization through any of the 3 main pathways. So the 3 main pathways are jnana, this is in India, bhakti, which is devotion, jnana is truth. Bhakti is devotion, and various forms of yoga, which is basically union. There's Raja Yoga, you've probably heard of Hatha Yogas, various other sorts of yoga as well. So in addition to jnana, Yogananda took him through all 3, all of the paths of bhakti and yoga as well, and very, very quickly. It's an amazing story of how quickly he came to realization through Yogananda. So the book that is the subject of this book study are the discourses. So they're basically notes from satsangs that he gave, and they're not his words totally, and probably a lot of them are his words, but they were notes taken down by Nietzsche Tripta. And what Nietzsche says in the beginning, I can't remember which which section it is. There's several beginning sections, but that the two poems, Atma Darshan and Atma Nirvriti, are really prerequisites for fully understanding what's in these discourses. Now, those two poems, they were originally written in Atmananda's native language, but then he had a very good command of English, and he taught quite a lot in English because there were a number of Westerners there as well. And he translated himself, his own poems, into English, but they're not translated into poetic form, so they lose some of the poetry aspects in the translation. But nonetheless, they are his words, which is important. And what they do is they provide really a complete summary of his direct path teaching, and the difference between what you find in those poems and what's in the discourses are that they were written, they were not responses to individuals. In a satsang, a teacher will always respond to an individual, to where that individual is coming from. But these are poems he wrote just as poems, just to transmit the teaching. So they have a kind of purity and simplicity to them, and really they cover pretty much the whole of his teaching. And what you'll find in the discourses is really the application of some of those ideas to the questions that he was asked in his satsangs.
Wow, thank you for that introduction to these the work. I mean, I like the fact that we have copies of his own of the discourses for sure, but also his own, as you said, his own words. His, he took the time to make sure that these are like clarification of terms. It's like it gives definitions and clarity on the different ideas that will be visiting in the discourses, different applications of his terms and his teaching. And it feels like, excuse me, it feels like when he talks in these poems and introduces in the preface, he introduces them, it feels like he's talking directly to his students through them. It's remarkable. That was the feeling that I had from him. So I'm really want to say again, thank you for providing these for this book study, Jenny. And I think it's a rich add-on for the book study. It'll be interesting to see how our members here use his work, his poems, as they're called, or I would call them clarification of terms, or the contents, the glossary of terms.
I think they're more than that, Bill. I think they are designed more as meditations to actually take you to that experience. I think every time that's what they're taking you to, but they're taking you to that experience via reasoning. And he was described by Jean Klein as the master of higher reasoning.
Okay, well, I'm just using the words that they're using in calling it books or poems. I feel the same way. When you start to follow the theme or the idea that's presented, it gives a whole teaching in each section.
Yes,
So
yes.
it should be like followed as a devotional. You could do that in between our study groups.
Yes, and sometimes you'll find that when you look in the discourses, that there's a particular subject which you can actually find more of and more that you can meditate on. And here, for example, in Atmadarshan, chapter 5 is on deep sleep, Nivikalpa Samadhi, and the natural state, which is Sahaja Samadhi. And that for next week, that would be a very good one for people to read and contemplate on, use as a starting point for meditation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds really good. That's a good pointer to the way to use. There's so much content here. We just I wanted to invite a couple of different ways that we can use it without being having so much of it and going, okay, what do I look at first?
There's something else I wanted to mention about how to use it. It's in the foreword it explains the structure of the 3 volumes, and I would encourage everyone to get volume 3 right away, as well as volume 1, because it's a very useful companion to volume 1. So what it has at the end of volume 3 is a set of spiritual statements that Atmananda made, which are, again, they're lovely as a starting point for contemplation and meditation. They're very, very simple. And I think probably those statements are likely to be his exact words. There's a Sanskrit glossary, and even if you've followed other paths which use Sanskrit terms, it's worth checking in this glossary for Atmananda's meaning, because as anyone who's studied Sanskrit knows, every Sanskrit word has several shades of meaning. You can sort of split it up into its individual bits and find many shades of meaning in every word. So it's useful to use that glossary to understand what he means by each Sanskrit word. And there's also an index. Now, the index is very helpful, because if you find that there's one particular note, one particular discourse where you really don't understand, if you look up that topic in the index and then read the other notes that cover the same subject, you'll find you get a much better understanding of it. That's really worth looking at. And finally, there's the life sketch, which is interesting. It's not particularly important, but it's certainly interesting and an enjoyable read. So I would recommend getting volume 3 as well.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. I'm looking at the 3 volumes and going, wow, this one's 40 plus weeks. This could take 3 years to go through these books, just these 3 books. And they're available right now. They weren't available for a long time. And I want to thank Lisa Natoli for pointing me to these. When Lisa finds a teacher, she looks for who the teacher of that teacher was and who the teacher of that teacher was. And she looks to, and she's the one that pointed out Atmananda Krishna Menon to me a couple of years ago, and then found that the books, these discourses were available, which is why they showed up here. Yeah. So let's get into the, you kind of covered the foreword, the introduction. Let's look at the introduction.
Yeah, yes. So just to explain a little bit more about the introduction and what it's trying to get across. up to that point in history, Advaita Vedanta was taught in a progressive way, and disciples of a guru had to spend time doing intense spiritual practices, sort of meditation, devotional rituals, all sorts of asceticism. And then when they were deemed ready, their teacher would transmit the non-dual teaching to them. And my first teacher, Dr. Francis Rolls, he was taught that way by the Shankaracharya, and the teaching that was finally transmitted to him was secret, and that was very common. So Atmananda himself reached self-realization through that traditional approach. But what happened was that he realized that in the modern age, that's unnecessary. And Nietzsche explains that, and he says in the introduction, great advancement has been made in all walks of life. Methods of transport in space have progressed from walking to flying. The achievements of science and technology have almost annihilated space. Vedanta, which is a deep and relentless inquiry into the nature of truth, has also not lagged behind in improving its methods. Thus, what real aspirants experienced after a whole life's intense effort in the Vedic age is made attainable in the present age in a comparatively short period of time by a more direct application of the higher reason in man. Such was the method adopted by Shri Atmananda. And that's why he called his teaching the direct path. And just to say a little bit more about the direct path, there can be some confusion about that, because the direct path doesn't mean that from the point of view of an individual, there aren't any stages in the recognition of our true nature and our establishment in it and as it. What it means is that the teacher, direct path teacher, keeps taking you back to your true nature in as a direct way as possible, rather than giving you spiritual exercises to do. So it's a path of understanding through higher reasoning. That's what the direct path is.
Yeah, thank you for that. I love I just love your the way you present material so clearly, Jenny. And what you just described, I mean, of course, I kind of laughed when it says, this was written 75 years ago, and they're thinking that they're current in technology, and they have no idea that there's, we have 141 people in this talking about this all over the world right now. The direct path. So we're really tasting the fruits of what he was pointing to. He had no idea how direct it was going to be, and also this is the thing that what you just described is the way Rupert's teaching drew me in to a style that I wasn't familiar with, which is the direct path. And watching him, this is probably 7 years ago now, watching him always take the questioner back to the truth, always taking them, not getting muddled in the content, not getting muddled in their story, but going back to what is it that's aware of the experience, and having them have the direct experience, and letting it actually does all the work. When one knows that their true nature, they reside there, and everything is just is divested into the space that is aware of it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that after that paragraph that you just read in the introduction, there's there's another little paragraph under that said that he had Atmananda had a twofold mission in life. The first of it, in his own words, was to expound the highest truth of the ultimate reality in a manner and language understandable even to the kitchen maid. I love this. I know, right? Because this, and this is why in the beginning I'm going, it feels like a university class content, but yet it's for the kitchen maid. It's for me. It's for you. It's for you with a spiritual background or no background. And that's that was I love reading that. It was just okay. This guy is just he's a policeman, so he's just speaking to normal people. Pretty high and lofty ideas. So we do have to be alert. We do have to be attentive. We can't be multitasking and probably get this.
Yes, and
at least that's my experience.
Yes, yeah. And his second mission was to re-establish the dignity of the householder and his birthright to strive and to be liberated while still remaining a householder. And again, that really goes back to how things were in India. There was a feeling that you had to be a sannyasin, there had to be a renunciate to achieve enlightenment, to recognize your true nature. But he realized that was not the case, and that was part of his mission to say, this is for everyone. This is not just for special people who give up everything just for their own spiritual search. This is for everyone in ordinary walks of life.
Yeah, that really feels good. And also the other part of it, the way he presents it and the way it's presented through his teaching, it's not some special thing. It's this is echoed through the teaching of Jean Klein, Francis Lucille, Rupert Spira. All of them, they echo the ordinariness of the teaching for their audience, and this is the way we're getting it on this sort of the descending end of it, or the receiving end of it. We're getting it the way it was intended to be received.
Yes, yeah.
So thank you, Atmananda, for this beautiful work that you're providing. What else would you like to share on the foreword before we move to the next bit?
Well, the introduction. Yes, there's a lovely explanation of how truth can't be expressed in words. He says some of the disciples who came from distant continents did not possess even a working knowledge of the English language. And even then, they were able to grasp the truth quite well. Therefore, it is evident that no language is the language of truth. All language is the language of untruth alone. Language is made use of to reach the very brink of untruth, beyond which the Guru, representing the languageless truth, stands revealed in all his glory. The truth is also revealed as the real nature of the aspirant himself. So it was not just about the words he speaks. So people get stuck on the words, and I think there was a comment up on the chat board wanting to go back to the words. The words are in the past. What the words can do is point us to our true nature, but it's our communion, it's our being together that is the important thing. And that was what was important in Atmananda's time and in his satsangs. And it's what's important in the retreats that you might go to from Francis or Rupert.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, thank you. And there was a few comments on the chat, and if anyone has any questions, you can just use the raise hand feature, and we'll get to those in a few minutes. And the lineage of teaching, I'm pretty sure I have this right. Atmananda was Jean Klein's teacher.
No. He wasn't Jean Klein's teacher. Jean Klein met him 3 times, I gathered from Francis, but he wasn't his teacher. Jean Klein's teacher, I think he was a Sanskrit scholar. So that was the idea, particularly in Advaita Vedanta, is one has a Karana Guru. And the Karana Guru is your teacher, and you stay with that teacher. There's a little bit more about this later on. You stay with that teacher until and beyond enlightenment. So this, so he was not Jean Klein's guru. However, he was presumably and almost certainly someone that his guru recommended to go and talk to. In addition, Jean Klein also had another, I think it might have been 2 other teachers after his the jnana stage of his understanding. One doing yoga, and I think probably mostly hatha yoga, and the other on the tantric side of things.
Okay.
Well, one thing to mention to people is that there's nothing tantric in here. This is pure Advaita Vedanta. So it's the yoga of bringing the teaching out to your life in the world is not really dealt with. It's partly alluded to in some of the discourses, but it's not really dealt with because this is a purely Advaita Vedanta path. Whereas if you go to Francis or to Rupert, there's the tantric side, the yoga side, is an equally important part of the teaching, and that was it was those 2 things that Jean Klein brought together. Was the Advaita Vedanta, the inward facing inquiry, Atmavichara, it's called self-inquiry, but self-inquiry is not a very good translation, really. And then the outward side, how you relate to the world from that understanding. And the path of the trika, the threefold path of Tantra, which is initially the path of the individual, while you still believe yourself to be an individual, then the path of the energy, and then beyond that, the path of Shiva. And that's where you recognize the self in everything.
Mm-hmm. It feels to me that the teaching, that Rupert's teachings and Francis's teachings are both influenced by Atmananda and Jean Klein. But it feels, because what Atmananda teaches and Jean Klein comes through both of their teachings.
Yes, yes, and obviously Francis comes through Rupert's teaching a lot as well. So yes, it is a lineage in a sense, coming down. Yeah.
The other thing I liked on the introduction, we've already passed the forward. I meant the introduction a minute ago, but the other thing that I was looking at in the introduction that I wanted to just make a point to see is at the bottom of page, I guess it's 15, Roman numeral 10:5. There it says, therefore, a solitary yet glowing example says, there's a name I can't pronounce too much. Udalaka.
Udalaka, yeah.
Udalaka to his son. Let's see, where's a good place to start? There is no data for any argument in favor of the sannyasins' stand, but their capacity for mischief cannot be gainsaid. Therefore, a solitary yet glowing example in the course of several centuries often becomes necessary to blot out such superstition. So his focus was in blotting out these old ideas, these old superstitions. And I like that. It says, such was the life of Shri Atmananda, the sage. He was an ideal householder, an ideal police officer, upright and fearless, who ruled his subordinates as well as the criminals under his charge by love and love alone, and an ideal guru to his disciples in all the continents of the world. And I felt like this was a real guru. This was a guru who wasn't trying to prop himself up to be something or someone special. So I really like that because I like that guru character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have a question, Jenny. I thought that Atmananda was coming out of the police, out of his work experience, and his guru showed up in the street from the guru that he had in his mind, and I thought he only had one visit with him, and he had his awakening. Is that someone else?
No, he did have one visit, and there's this absolutely amazing description. See if I can find it of what what happened. Yes, let me read this. It's incredible. The sun had set, but darkness did not shroud the earth as usual, since the bright moon had already risen. In that cool and gentle moonlight, they entered the house. So this is Atmananda and Yogananda, and sat in the front room. A frank and lively discussion on spiritual topics was started. Sri Krishna Menon, as every sincere aspirant is expected to do, asked many shrewd and taxing questions, which under any other circumstances would have seemed to offend against normal politeness. But the Swamiji, overflowing with love and inwardly enjoying the earnestness, sincerity, and shrewdness of the aspirant, answered the questions most satisfactorily, gently and unostentatiously, covering even those in the mind of the aspirant to which he had not yet given expression. And then it says, they talked in that room the whole night through, and before daybreak, all instruction needed for the whole of the disciple's spiritual career had been imparted by the Swamiji and imbibed by the disciple. So that's from the live sketch in volume 3.
I know I saw it somewhere, and I saw it about someone, and but when you talk about the level of teaching that his guru gave him, it makes it sound like he would have spent years with this one.
Yes, his Yogananda gave him a lot of spiritual exercises to do after that. So he gave him more work to do, because don't forget, this was not, he was not being brought along the direct path. He was being, because he had the necessary preparation at that point, and Yogananda saw that. He was given the highest level of teaching, so the secret teaching, in other words, in that meeting, in that one meeting. But then there was, as for all of us, following in enlightenment, there's a long period of integration of that understanding in our lives. And in this tradition, which again, as I mentioned, it's not an outward facing. There's no outward facing component of it. It's all inward facing. Then there are a lot of spiritual exercises that are done after that stage, and so that's what he was given. So it was a while after that before he could say that he was established in his teaching. What he means, and it was he who again used that expression, being established in the teaching, and that's if no thoughts, no sensations, no bodily sensations, no perceptions can take you away from abiding as what you are.
Yeah, and I think that that comes across really, really well in his teaching.
Yeah,
comes across really well, because it really does it keeps coming back to the you that you are. It really he keeps bringing you back to your essential nature in following the teaching of his material, of his books.
Yes.
So do you want to keep going on the introduction? I mean, on the introduction.
Yes, and the introduction.
There's a little bit.
Yes, he. There's a lovely description of Atmananda's satsangs, and Nietzsche explains that Atmananda would take up the question, analyze it exhaustively, and answer it from different standpoints, one after another, never stopping halfway, but pursuing the problem relentlessly to its very foundation, the ultimate background. And he said he would always make the listening disciple contact his own real nature many times in the course of each talk.
Yeah, I really, it sounds like he was like Rupert, like Francis. I never met Jean Klein, but very generous in the space of time that is required for someone to fully see what's being offered.
Yes. And at the end of the introduction, there's another important point that Nietzsche makes. It says questions were asked from different levels by different persons, and answers were always given in tune with the level and standard of the questioner himself. Therefore, answers to the same question at different times might often seem varied, even contradictory, but they ultimately converge upon the same center.
Yeah. And then it says, thus, even repetitions have been really enriching and also entertaining. So we're really not here for entertainment, but we do get entertained. We do find a joyful entertainment in discussing these matters.
Yes.
It's almost like it's giving us an introduction into how to be a good student of the teaching.
Yes. It's not intended for us. It's not intended for our age, but it's by expressing it in terms used in a different age and to people from a different background from us, then it leads us to think more deeply about what he's really meaning. I mean, on a spiritual path, you have your own living teacher, and that's what's important. But as Francis said in a recent satsang, when you've got a clear understanding of the teaching, not before, but when you've got a clear understanding of this teaching, it's good to go back to some of the ancient sages, to all the different traditions, and just see what they're saying, and try and see how it relates to what you understand now within yourself. And I think that's also the case with Atmananda.
Wow. So if we turn the page, why such open talk?
Yes, well, I mentioned the secrecy with which the truth was guarded in the past, and he explains that secrecy was necessary in earlier times to avoid the destabilizing effect of true knowledge on religion and culture, and religion and culture were what kept society together. But as he points out, it's not, in fact, even now, it's even less the case that religion keeps society and traditions keep society together. They don't. So there really isn't any need for secrecy, and Atmananda recognized that.
Yeah. And let's see, it says at the top of the page, Shri Atmananda expounded the ultimate truth in the most direct and uncompromising manner, and he gives his reasons here below for adopting this drastic method. I don't know what his, I don't have any idea what his following, or did they meet in his house, his devotees?
Yes, I think so. It doesn't make it completely clear, but I think that was the case. And after a time, there were quite a few people from the West. He was never as well known in the West as Ramana Maharshi, who was made famous by all sorts of celebrities of the day, and Atmananda wasn't. But people who are really serious, a lot of them seem to find their way to Atmananda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the vibrational, the frequency of the seeker is going to find what it's looking for.
Yes.
It comes to you at your request somehow.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to look at the sketch of the sage?
Yes, and he so he's referring to what he's written, which is quite a long biography at the end of volume 3, and it's rather sweet because Nietzsche felt that it was necessary to write a biography, because everyone has biographies, especially after a sage dies. I remember reading a biography of the Shankaracharya Shantananda Saraswati, who was my teacher's teacher originally, and again that was it was written after he died and thought to be necessary. So, but he explains that it's not about the individual. He says the sage is impersonal. He's outgrown the shell of his own life, the shell called personality. The personality and the sage are in two distinct and separate planes. therefore, it's quite futile to scan the life story of a sage to measure his real worth. This might seem quite an unusual warning. His life sketch has very little direct bearing upon the body and the theme of this book. And I remember a lovely dialogue with Francis in which he explains that there is only one sage. There are not two sages, or a large number of sages. There is only one, because ultimately there is only the truth. When someone is speaking the truth, they are that one sage.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's a big statement. That's
Yes.
that's the absolute speaking as oneself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in the many facets, the different, it seems like there's a multiplicity of voices that are, it's and actually what's really mind blowing is that it's you.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's mind blowing. Yeah.
So should we go on to the last of the preliminary sections?
Yes, let's
Quite a
do
lot
that.
of them there were, on devotion to a living guru. And really this relates to the Indian tradition, and in a way it's quite outdated, but I think there's some elements of it which are still relevant. So he starts with a quote from Chandogya Upanishad: "He who is blessed with a Karana Guru alone knows the truth." Karana Guru is a guru who is capable of leading his disciples to the recognition of their true nature. And so obviously by definition it's someone who has recognized his true nature and is pretty well established in that as a Karana Guru. And I mentioned a Acharya is kind of a level above that, because they can bring a student to that recognition through any of the main paths. So there are loads of stories of people who had a sudden awakening without any kind of guru. But often you find there's something missing, and it's one thing to have an awakening, and it's quite another to become established in your new understanding. So a guru, so he says, someone who's blessed with a Karana Guru alone knows the truth. I think it's probably generally true, but not always true, would be my guess. I don't think we have any evidence that it's always the case, but I certainly suspect that it's nearly always the case. And devotion to a guru, which he talks about, it is very much a cultural thing. It's very Indian. I think mainly he's warning against being devoted to two different gurus at the same time. But in the Western expression of the direct path, we say, no, don't be devoted to any human being, any object.
Yeah.
Don't be devoted to any object of awareness. Be devoted only to truth, not to any teacher, not to any teaching, and not to any object. And that's the modern expression of of the direct path. The letter that's referred to here was to a 13-year-old girl called Ponu, and what the letter says is, "Peace thou be, letter received." So she obviously written to him. The unconditioned love towards one's own guru is the only ladder to the goal of truth. That prema bhakti is not something which could be shared. No other kind of love or devotion should be capable of bearing comparison to it. A disciple should never bow allegiance to two gurus at the same time. May the Lord Bhagavan, who is the embodiment of Shri Atmananda, abide in Ponu forever with love and blessings. So that's what he wrote to her. Now she was only 13, and it can happen that a 13-year-old girl is easily influenced. A fake guru could come along and influence her. So he's warning. But what he does say is it's the unconditioned love towards one's own guru. It's not really about one's own guru. It's about the love. And I think that's really what's important. So I don't think we should take it as one should only ever have one guru. For a lot of people, that is the case. I mean, that was certainly the case for Francis. It wasn't the case for Jean Klein. He had more than one, but they were in succession. He certainly didn't have more than one at any one time, and I think that is good advice.
Yeah.
And it was not the case for me. I felt I needed to go deeper into the teaching, so I moved from Rupert to Francis.
Yeah, and many of us have gone different paths. I've gone through a number of different traditions over the last 35 plus years, looking for the truth that was looking for itself, what I eventually found. And when I mentioned a minute ago that you are this one, and Paul said, not the personal self, you, right? And I said, and the answer is yes, right. It's definitely not the personal you. The you is the universal you. It's the I am that is, there's only one I am. It's the same I am that Moses was speaking to in his head. And it's the same one. There's only one, absolute one. And that's you, but it's not you, the person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Paul has asked about the Satguru, and it really it's pretty much the same as a Karana Guru. It's truth. It's someone a guru that imparts truth.
Yeah, so that's I think that is the end of our introduction, foreword, preface, the introduction to the two books, the teachings really. And as these are to be richly contemplated. These are like gold. And again, thank you, Jenny, for providing those. How would you like to conclude our time together? Do we want to take any questions, or anyone have any questions you have about this book study going forward? We'll be together for the next 40 weeks, and we're open for questions.
There's a very good point on the chat from Rick West, who says these books contain countless pointers. If one doesn't resonate, ignore it and move on to the next.
Yes.
No teaching will help you figure things out. A true teaching isn't about getting answers to our questions. It's about questioning the answers, all of them. Remember, they're pointers at best, and that's important. And particularly in volume 3, the short statements from Atmananda are a beautiful subject for contemplation. Just meditate on those, or either of we'll start with Atmadarshan before going on to Atmanavriti. And again, you can read a whole chapter. I think someone asked about which chapter I recommended before next week, and it was chapter 5 of Atmadarshan.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And we have some hands up, and we're gonna you can ask questions in the member area of the book study, and the questions will be transmitted to everyone that's in that member area. So your questions can be answered during the week, or you can just put your question there, and we'll look there first. Next week, at the beginning of each of the book studies, we can answer those questions. So we can work with that 2 different ways. And Sylvia has her hand up. Are you ready for questions too?
Yes, but
There you are.
for next week, I don't have chapters. So could you say page numbers that will be ready?
We don't have chapter. Jenny was just mentioning chapters in the handout book, in Krishna Menon's book, Atmananda's book. She was talking about the chapters that are listed there. For the book study, because the pages are not in chapters, we are just using page numbers for each session, and that is something that I put together in the member area. It's our book study schedule.
It's 1 to 5, pages 1 to 5 in the main book.
Yeah. Yeah. Each week has been broken up into 10 discourses, and then page numbers attached to that. And that's on the schedule.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Hi, Nancy. Welcome.
Hello again. Nice to see you. My question is similar to the one that was just asked. But I thought we were going to do discourses 1 to 10 on the first session. And so I've read them all. And that's really what I want to understand is, before we cover certain areas, should we be reading that to prepare coming with our questions?
Yeah, this week was scheduled for what we covered this week: the foreword, the preface, the introduction. And since Jenny added these 2 books, we added that. And then we'll start with the discourses beginning next week. And it's my suggestion that you read the discourses, you just sort of become familiar with the content. Also, as Jenny suggested, contemplate the teaching in the handouts that were made available, and together just allow the truth to find you where you are. It will reveal itself. This isn't like a search or get ready for a test, but just get familiar with the content, and then as we talk about it, it'll start to be absorbed into your beingness. And even if you're not aware of it, it'll be doing its work.
Okay, so just to further that, so next week, will we be going through each one individually, and there'll be a discussion on each one-on-one? One of the discourses, I mean.
Well, the way the book study will work is that I'll ask the co-host what are their highlights, what are the their highlights of the 10 discourses, and we'll look at their things that are the most potent, and we'll talk about those. And then if you have a question about one that wasn't mentioned, you'll put your hand up and you'll say, in number 5 or number 18, and then we'll work it that way. And it's sort of dynamic. As a group, we do it together. As a host and a co-host, we don't do every single one. We'll look at the things that are kind of standout experiences for either myself or the co-host, and then the audience participates when you put your hands up, and that we've allowed additional time for that, so that there's plenty of time for you to ask questions or make comments about things that stood out for you.
Thank you. Just make a comment, it's not a question. One thing that would be really helpful is making available a copy of the chat. Somehow send it out as a link, because there's lots of really good links within the chat that, unless you know how to save the chat notes, to copy them back, so later on, you can click on the link that's being shared. I think that would be helpful.
Thank
And
you.
I'm done.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we're not going to do the chat thing. I'm sorry. It's just it's more time consuming, and there's just not resources to do that. So if there's parts of the chat that you like, just you'll need to save it for yourself. But thank you for the suggestion. Dave?
Yeah, thank you. Jenny, I don't know if you'd be comfortable, but I'd be curious as what you received from Francis's teachings that maybe you didn't find elsewhere.
Yes, there's a number of different things. One thing I would highlight would be not knowing. That's really the essence of Francis's teaching. We don't know what we are. If we say, I am consciousness, we are making consciousness an object, and we are creating a subject-object relationship. We don't know what we are. We can abide as what we are, but we don't know what we are objectively, phenomenally. So that's one key thing. There are things which are more to do with the yoga, how we apply the teaching in normal life. Francis has quite a unique take on that, which is very practical, because he's worked in business, in industry, and also for the military, like Atmananda. And also to do with relationships. He takes a tantric position rather than an Advaitic one. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. And can I ask, what was the format that you were able to receive the teachings?
From Francis? Well, large numbers of dialogues on all sorts of things. It's important to have your own dialogue. Words are not really, as it said in the introduction. Words are not the teaching. The teaching is your relationship with your teacher, and it's beyond words. So words are really just a tuning in mechanism, a bit like an old-fashioned radio when you tune in the signal in order to receive the program. It's a tuning in, and that's all. The understanding is always beyond words. Understanding is in that infinite, timeless space of awareness, which is beyond all words.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, Jenny. Also, several people have mentioned some easy ways to save the text I am not aware of, but just follow the couple of ideas that are different ways that you can save the text, and it's available to you at your own request. So that's good. Easy peasy, right? Yeah. I don't see any more questions. That sounds really good that you have available access to the text, to the chat. That's good. Well, Jenny, I think we're finished with this week's class. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This has been awesome, and I look forward to the first 10 discourses next week. Oh, we have a hand up. William Price, Austin, Texas. How you doing, brother?
Good to see everyone. I can't find the downloads section in Peer Presence.
In the member area?
Well, I'm logged in.
You're logged into the member area on Kajabi, where
I'm not sure. I'm probably at the place where Pure Presence book study.
I had the same problem. I think I can clarify. Is your page as large as it can be? Mine was minimized and I couldn't find it. When I maximized my page, there it was on the top, or it's on the side, depending on your device. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. I'll do it on my desktop. I'm on
then you'll find it. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, William. Good to see you.
Good to see you all too.
Thank you.
There's two more hands up, Bill. I don't know
Yes,
whether you want to.
I see that. Andrew has his hand up. Hi, Andrew.
Unmute, Andrew. You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, that's I'm really looking forward to this teaching by Atmananda. I've read so many books and just so many ideas. I'm trying to find out, what are we going to get out of this? Is this something that will awaken us to the truth, or we are going to be just a scholar of Atmananda teachings, or we're going to understand our true self? I'm trying to find out what can really get us in terms of awakening. And
yes, Andrew, books, generally speaking, are not going to awaken anyone. What can happen is that maybe part of the discussion of or just someone reading part of the text could awaken you, but really awakening is about exploring, investigating for yourself, and the best approach is always to do that with your own teacher. Have a live discussion. Now you can do that with Bill and whatever co-host is around at the time. And if that gives you what you're looking for, then that's fine. Otherwise, you need to find a living teacher. That's what I would advise for everyone. And it's what Atmananda also advised. Karanaguru is a living teacher. The Karanaguru is the one that takes you to enlightenment. That's someone who is established in their true nature and has the capability to lead you to your true nature. But it's a direct live relationship.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. You're welcome to come back every week. It's absolutely free, and it just might help you on your seeking for the awakening experience. Everything is helpful. You're not here by accident. You think you chose to be here, but it wasn't you making the choice. Eduardo?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jenny. The discourses are the poems, as you mentioned. I looked up under the downloads and found the Krishna Menon Atma Darshan. That seems like a whole text in itself. And then the articles written by Nivriti. Is there somewhere that these poems are that you'd like us to be familiar with? I had looked for them previous to this meeting and didn't find them. I could, or are we suggesting to go find them on our own through online?
No, they're in the member area. There's 2 PDFs that Jenny sent to me, and then I have included them in the member area where you access the content, where you access the replays. There's a link that Susan just posted in the chat for you to click on, and that will take you there.
Oh, that'd be helpful. Great. Thank you, Susan.
Are you clicking on that?
I will right now. I'm doing 2 things. I'm looking on the computer for the articles. Let me go to the chat.
Yeah, just click on that before we click off. Otherwise, you'll lose it.
Okay.
Yes, they're not generally available. In fact, they were suppressed, and probably still are generally suppressed by Atmananda's heirs, but they've been passed around between truth lovers for several decades now, but generally just among friends. So you won't find them on the internet, because I think on the open internet.
I thank you, Jenny. I looked again. This the chat link just brought me back to our home Pure Presence page, Bill, and there are 3 downloads there. Yeah, but they're actually long. Actually, it looks like a book. The Darshan, and then the other.
They are both books. Yes,
they are. There's 18 pages each. They're not a lot of pages.
Oh, and those are what you're referring to as poems.
Yeah, the poems, they're referred as poems, as books. Okay. They're the teaching, really. They're Atmananda's teaching. It's brilliant.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you very much. I've got that. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Good to see you, Eduardo.
Yeah.
Right. We're at the end of our time, everyone. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week for the first 10 discourses. And Susan Telford will be our co-host, and we'll see you then. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Bill.